Thank you, Claire. Thank you, the Economic Club of Chicago. Thank you, David, particularly. I want to say two things at the beginning. The first is just for the record and for those people watching on television. The Economic Club of Chicago and Bloomberg both invited Vice President Harris to a similar interview about her economic plans that she has declined so far. And second, just to set some parameters about this interview, which I was just discussing with President Trump, we're going to focus on business and the economy. And that's partly because this is a business audience, but it's also because voters insist that the economy is the main issue that matters when they vote. So, on that note, let me invite onto the stage President Trump.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about what I believe is probably one of the best interviews that I've seen from President Trump in a long time. In fact, it was so good that it ended in a standing ovation after he absolutely schooled Bloomberg editor John McLethwaite on his economic policies that he's going to implement in his second administration, okay? And one of the reasons why I love this interview is because it really focuses on Trump's bread and butter, which is business and economics, okay? We know that the mainstream media is trying to push the narrative that Kamala's policies are going to be better than Trump's policies. Although Kamala is already in office as vice president, and we can see the disaster that her policies have been, okay? We know this, okay? And one of the things that they're trying to hit Trump on in regards to his policies is the tariffs. Trump is obviously trying to use tariffs as a tool for negotiation. This is the same guy that wrote The Art of the Deal, okay? He knows how to negotiate. He's always negotiating when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to trade, when it comes to business, when it comes to economics. And this is one of the things I love about Trump is that he's always playing hardball, right? He's trying to make sure that the American people do not get screwed over by foreign countries when it comes to the issue of trade, okay? And that has led to criticism of Trump, and Trump does a great job at pushing back against that criticism in this interview, where he basically schools this journalist for an hour straight on his policies and what he's trying to do in order to protect American jobs and consumers.
Two things, if you look at it. Number one is for protection of the companies that we have here and the new companies that will move in, because we're going to have thousands of companies coming into this country. We're going to grow it like it's never grown before. And we're going to protect them when they come in, because we're not going to have somebody undercut them.
And yes, you're going to find some people who will gain from individual tariffs. The overall effect could be massive in terms of the economy.
I agree it's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Well,
let me just tell you. No, let me tell you. I know how committed you are to this, and it must be hard for you to, spend 25 years talking about tariffs as being negative and then have somebody explain to you that you're totally wrong. It'll have a negative. It will have. I'll go a step further.
40
if
million,
you don't
40
do
million,
this,
President
this
Trump,
country
40 million jobs is a lot of jobs to rely on.
They're all coming back.
Those are 40 million jobs. Those are 40 million jobs in America that rely on trade.
Are you ready? John Deere, great company. They announced about a year ago they're going to build big plants outside of the United States, right? They're going to build them in Mexico.
And you threatened them with tariffs and they stopped.
That's right. I said, if John Deere builds those plants and not selling anything into the United States, they just announced yesterday they're probably not going to build the plants, okay? I kept the jobs here.
Critics say your tariffs will end up being like a national sales tax.
Nope.
Because
the countries
if you have America at the moment has $3 trillion worth of imports, you're going to add tariffs to every single one of them. That is going to push up the cost for all those people who want to buy foreign goods.
Now, what's going to happen?
That is just simple mathematics, President Trump.
It's not. Yeah, it is, but not the way you figured. I was always very good at mathematics. Yes. Let me tell you, you're saying $3 trillion.
That's $3 trillion worth of imports.
And they don't have to pay. And by the higher the tariff, the more likely it is to have them come into the country. The
higher the tariff, the more you're going to put on the value of that piece, those goods, the higher people are going to have to pay in shops.
Ready? The higher the tariff, the more likely it is that the company will come into the United States and build a factory in the United States so it doesn't have to pay the tariff.
That will take many, as you know, that will take many years.
In fact, I'll tell you, you know, there's another theory is that the tariff, you make it so high, so horrible, so obnoxious that they'll come right away. When I do the 10%, 10% is really, first of all, 10% when you collect it is hundreds of billions of dollars. The numbers that you're talking about, all reducing our deficit. But really, so there's two ways of looking at a tariff. You can do it as a money-making instrument, or you can do it as something to get the companies. Now, if you want the companies to come in, the tariff has to be a lot higher than 10%, because 10% is not enough. Guys, they're not going to do it for 10. But you make a 50% tariff, they're going to come in. And it's been a tough business. It was a great business many years ago. And I would not let U.S. steel be sold to Japanese, by the way. It's psychologically, I think it would be.
That's the Nippon steel, as you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't let it be sold. But I would stop it if it hasn't been completed by the time I'm president, because I think it sets a horrible tone. But I had a lot to do with steel. We were going to lose all our steel companies because China, as you remember, was dumping steel at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And I put a 50% tax on that and a tariff on that, all dumped steel. And it was also bad steel. It was what they call dirty steel. It wasn't good steel, which is a bad thing for structural components of buildings and planes and things like that. They were dumping crap into our country. And I put a 50% tariff. I started at 25, I raised it to 50 because the 25 didn't quite do it. I raised it to 50 and that did it. They stopped dumping steel. And I saved our steel mills by having that. We saved it. We saved our steel. Now, what was left, because we've lost so much, but there are certain companies you have to have. There are certain things you have to have. Steel, you have to have. If you go to war...
People are betting that your policies are going to drive up debt, they're going to drive up inflation, so they're going to drive up interest rates. Are the investors wrong?
Yeah, I had 4 years no inflation. I had 4 years no inflation.
But that was when you had much...
I had 4 years. It's better than that. And Biden, who has no idea where the hell he is, okay? Biden went 2 years with no inflation because he inherited from me. And then they started spending money like drunken sailors. What does the Wall Street Journal know? I'm meeting with them tomorrow. What does the Wall Street Journal know? They've been wrong about everything. So have you, by the way. You've been wrong about
You're trying to turn this. You've
been wrong about
you're trying to turn this into debate. There are business people.
You're wrong. You've been wrong. You've been wrong all your life on this stuff. How about this? Gavin Newsom, he's the governor of California.
Newsom.
He signed Newsom, I call him.
Yeah. But do you think?
No, he corrected me. He corrected me. I said, that's the first time I've been corrected.
There are CEOs out here. If they said those sort of things about a rival CEO, they'd be sacked. Do you think it's fine for a president?
But they don't have to survive like me. They don't have to go through what I have to go through. There has never been a president that's been treated like me, so I have to fight my own way.
Well, you made a very good job of.
He signed a bill in California 2 days ago that you don't even have the right to ask a person for voter ID. And if you ask a person for voter ID, of course you have to show voter ID. The only reason you wouldn't do it because they want to cheat. The bill says you cannot, it's against the law for you to ask a person, may I please see your voter ID when he votes? What is our country coming to?
Well, you've given us a tour d'horizon of where that country might be going to. Thank you very much, President Trump.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the conversation.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. There's so many parts of that interview that I wish I could play, but I only can play the really good parts. But man, he talked about so many things that he did under his administration. When it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to trade, you can tell the guy really cares about this country in regards to not allowing us to be screwed over. Like, for example, he talked about how you have all these foreign cars being imported into the United States They don't pay any tariffs, okay? But we can't sell any American cars in Europe, right? They don't drive American cars in Europe because of the high tariffs, right? So for all these other countries, right, they say, oh, well, you know, hey, tariffs, hey, it's good for them, right? But for the United States, not good for us. Now, again, I'm not a big tariff person, okay? I'm not the biggest fan of tariffs, but I understand what he's doing, right? He's using it as a negotiating tool to protect American jobs and American industries and to keep key products manufactured here in the United States, right? Things like, for example, steel. If we outsource steel to, for example, Japan, okay, and other parts of the world, that's a national security risk, okay? China bombs Japan, destroys their steel. Guess what? We don't have steel, okay? Because we don't make it in the United States, right? I mean, we saw what happened during the pandemic where we were running out of key goods because we don't make it in the United States. All of it is made overseas. So when something happens overseas and you can't get access to the goods, then that becomes a national security risk. This is why we are now trying to ramp up our semiconductor production here in the United States, because we realize that, oh, wait, China's about to invade Taiwan, right? We might want to make our semiconductors here in the United States so that if China happens to invade Taiwan, then we're not dependent on China for a key component of basically every electronic that we use, right? Every electronic that we use basically has a semiconductor. So yeah, imagine China having complete and total control over semiconductor production. That's not a good thing for us, right? That is a huge national security risk, because if China says, hey, we're going to cut it off, and the United States, we're not manufacturing these things, these key goods that we need, then we're screwed, right? So again, that is how Trump is thinking, right? And that is the way that you have to think from an America first perspective. But our politicians, they think from an America last perspective. So they think that it's a great idea to just allow foreign companies to sell their products to the American people with no tariffs cheaply over here, but yet our companies can't sell products overseas to their people. So, you know, here's the thing. There's a balance to it, right? There's pros and there's cons, okay? Trump is not applying tariffs across the board, okay? He's just using that as a negotiation tool, right? He's starting off from a place of strength, okay? Saying that, hey, we're going to hit you hard, right? We're going to hit you fast in order to get favorable terms, in order to keep American manufacturers here and to incentivize manufacturers to come over here to the United States and to create good paying jobs here in the United States of America. Could you guys imagine Kamala Harris having a conversation like this? I couldn't, right? I could not imagine Kamala Harris sitting down for hours straight and just going back and forth with a Bloomberg guy, right? This guy knows his stuff, okay? I could not imagine her doing that, talking about the economy for an hour straight. She would not be able to do it. This is why she declined. There's no way she would be able to do an interview like this, right? This is why she sticks to Stephanie Ruhle, who is the finance woman at MSNBC, because Stephanie Ruhle is not going to have this type of conversation. She's not going to do that, but Trump can, because this is his bread and butter. So that being said, just so people can understand Trump's policy here simply, and don't get fooled by the mainstream liberal media that is fear-mongering and gaslighting about what Trump actually wants to do. Again, he's negotiating, okay? This is what businessmen do. He's trying to get better terms for the American people. He's trying to make sure we don't get screwed over. It's strategic negotiation, okay? Don't listen to the mainstream liberal media claiming that, oh, Trump's policies are going to cause inflation. Well, his policies, and he was big on these tariffs in his first administration, didn't do all these things that they claim, right, that it's going to do in his second term, which, again, it's funny how that works, okay? Biden and Kamala Harris decided that, hey, we like Trump's tariffs so much on China that we're going to decide to keep them, right? Again, it's amazing how that works. But anyways, one of Trump's economic advisors here, he's going to break down Trump's ideology when it comes to the use of tariffs in a way that is super simple and probably one of the best explanations that I've ever heard on national television. So without further ado, let's get into it.
When you talk to the president, former president, about tariffs, do you see it as a bargaining chip, or do you think you're going to see tariffs across the board of 20%?
I think we should put tariffs on stuff we make and not put tariffs on stuff we don't make. It's pretty simple. And of course it's a bargaining chip. We can't sell a Ford or GM in Europe. You go to Europe, you can't sell a Ford or GM. Why? There's 100% tariffs. How about in Japan? 100% tariffs. So do you think if we said we're going to tariff you the way you tariff us, do you think they're going to allow Mercedes and all these Japanese companies and Porsches and BMWs to all of a sudden have 100% tariffs in America? Of course not. They're going to come and negotiate, and their tariffs are going to come down. And finally, Ford and General Motors are going to be able to sell in these places.
How's that sound?
Of course they're going to come down. Of course. This is just negotiating.
Facts. That's all it is. It's basically just saying, listen, we want to be able to sell our stuff in your country. You sell your stuff in our country. We want to sell our stuff in your country, right? Which, again, helps out the American people, right? It helps create more American jobs. So, listen, if you don't let us sell our stuff in your country without taxing the hell out of us, right? Which is funny how that works, okay? It's funny how we're not allowed to tax them, but they're allowed to tax us, okay? And we never point the finger at them and say, why the hell are you taxing us so much, okay? Why don't you lower your tariffs, okay? So what Trump is saying, well, if you don't lower your tariffs, then we're basically going to tax the hell out of you and you won't be able to compete here in the United States. Now, if they can't sell here in the United States, if they can't compete here in the United States, guess what? They're going to go out of business, right? They're going to lose money, okay? So they're going to have to lower their tariffs, right? They're going to have to allow American companies to compete in their countries, right? Again, this is the art of the deal type of stuff, right? Again, this is not something I would expect MSNBC to understand. I would expect CNN to understand, okay? We don't want to apply the tariffs, right? We don't want to, but we're using them as a tool to try to get better terms for American businesses and consumers, right? That is what Trump is trying to do. And also to keep American manufacturers here in the United States. That is what he's doing.
It absolutely makes sense. If you do it strategically, if it's across the board, it creates a real problem. And the question is whether you believe the president is going to do it strategically or across the board. He keeps saying it across the board.
Well, when you're running for office, you make broad statements so people understand you.
Right.
Okay? Tariffs are an amazing tool by the president to use. They're an amazing tool, but he understands don't tariff stuff we don't make. Right? If we don't make it and you want to buy it, I don't want to put the price up there. It's pointless. But use tariffs to build in America. If we want to make it in America, tariff it. Or if we're competing with it, tariff it. But you got to remember, we need to protect the American worker. Finally, someone's going to protect the American worker. And Donald Trump is here to protect the American worker.
Do you think we make a lot of money in tariffs, or if they're used as negotiating tactics? Look, tariffs will come down there. We're not going to have super high tariffs here either. There's not going to be a big pot of money at the end of the day.
I love that story. So which is it? Do we make a lot of money on tariffs, or we bring productivity here and we drive up our workers here? So it's a win-win scenario. I like both of them. I think what's going to happen is we'll make a bunch of money on the tariffs, but mostly everybody else is going to negotiate with us and we will be more fair. In 1948, right, we came up with something called the Marshall Plan, right? The world, Germany and Japan were destroyed after World War II, and we wanted to export our economy to them. So we made a rule. They could tariff us, and we won't tariff them. So they can rebuild.
This is the best explanation I've heard of.
So they can rebuild their economy. We rebuilt their economy using something called the Marshall Plan. Yeah. Our economy is so awesome that we'll use it to help you rebuild. When should that have ended? What do you think, 1980? Right? 1985? I mean, why 40 years are Japan and Germany and all of Europe still tariffing the heck out of our auto industry, tariffing the heck out of our furniture industry? Do you realize all your furniture you're buying that's made foreign? It seems crazy. Why? It's because they tariff us and we don't tariff them. It's so obvious.
Yeah, what this man is saying is true. Right? I mean, at some point, we have to have politicians that actually protect the American people, the American consumer, and American industries. Now, again, there's give and take, right? There's balance, right? I'm about fair trade, okay? That's what I'm about. That's what Trump is about, okay? He's not trying to go full-blown trade war across the world. No, he's just saying, listen, we want better terms. We want better deals, okay? And he's using the tools at his disposal as president of the United States in order to do so. But again, because these people don't understand negotiations, they don't understand the art of the deal, they don't understand any of this stuff, they just think that, oh, well, Trump's applying a national sales tax. Nonsense, right? Absolute nonsense. It's ridiculous. It really is. And, you know, again, you got people like Kamala Harris she comes out here and when she talks about business, what does she talk about? She doesn't have the type of conversations that Trump has where he clearly understands how business works because he is a businessman, right? He is an actual entrepreneur. When Kamala Harris talks about business, when she talks about the economy, you can tell she doesn't know anything, right? She doesn't know anything about business or the economy at all. She's just repeating her talking points that she got from Mark Cuban, right? Listen to her talk about startups and small businesses. What does her plans entail, right? She can't sit down and have this type of conversation. No, heck no. Okay. Especially about something like tariffs, which again is complicated, right? It's not cut and dry. It's very nuanced in regards to the tariffs conversation and the effects of tariffs. Okay. The mainstream media wants to act like that is black and white, right? When that's just certainly not the case. But anyways, yeah, what did she come out and propose? Well, I'm going to give $20,000 to black men to start businesses. A program that's going to be filled with waste, fraud, and abuse, right? The government giving away money to people to start businesses shows a clear lack of understanding of how business works, how entrepreneurship works, that the government shouldn't be in the business of giving out money to people to start businesses in the first place. That's not how it works at all. It's not good economic policy. She has no clue what the hell she's talking about. She has no clue what she's doing. And that's why she can't show up to have a conversation like this the way that Trump can. Trump showed up and he went into the lion's den and had a in-depth back and forth policy conversation about the economy for an hour straight. For an hour straight. Was schooling this dude left and right with examples, right? He had examples to support the things that he was saying and that he was talking about because he actually did it, right? He understands how this stuff works. So this is one of the best interviews I've ever seen from President Trump. The guy got a standing ovation afterwards. It really shows you how well he did. You can see when he first came in, the crowd was kind of lukewarm, right? But then once he left, standing ovation, right? Because he killed it. He absolutely went in and destroyed this guy, okay? And this is why he is gaining momentum in this presidential election. It's interviews like this. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.